The quiet was the first thing that broke me. Not the silence of a house at midnight, but the absolute, crushing emptiness of a place where sound should have been, but wasn't. It happened on a Tuesday in November, when the first real cold snap hit our small town of Havenwood. I was alone in the attic, surrounded by 80 years of dust and forgotten things, trying to find a box of old tax records for my father. The attic was a cavern of dry wood and deep shadow, illuminated only by a single bare bulb hanging from a frayed wire. I was kneeling beside a massive, canvas-wrapped object, running my hand over the rough cloth, when the static began. It wasn't radio static, the comforting hiss of a frequency searching for a signal. This was different. It came from inside the walls, a raw, mechanical grinding that vibrated through the floorboards and into my knees. It felt like something heavy was moving inside the house's skeleton, dragging itself along the timber, and every movement was accompanied by that hateful, dry, whispering static. I froze, holding my breath, telling myself it was just the house settling, just the cold contracting the old beams. But the noise didn't sound structural. It sounded, and the word came to me unbidden, a certainty that chilled me to the bone. It sounded electronic. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who hates the dark. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, what is the single oldest object you keep in your home, and what secrets do you think it holds? The static stopped as abruptly as it started. The silence that rushed in to fill the space felt even heavier than before. I was trembling. I scrambled up and rushed down the folding attic stairs, slamming the hatch shut behind me. I told my father about it later that night, keeping my voice casual. The attic is making weird noises, like a bad radio signal. Dad, who had lived in that house his whole life, just grunted from behind his newspaper. That's the wind catching the old ventilation system, Caleb. Been doing it since 1950. Creaks like a wooden ship in a hurricane. But it hadn't been a creak. It had been static. I forgot about it, mostly, until the next Tuesday. The rhythm of its reappearance was the second thing that broke me. I was back in the attic, still hunting for the damn tax documents. It was warmer this time, the sun low in the sky, streaming orange light through the circular attic window. I found the box I was looking for, pulling it out from under a stack of moth-eaten blankets. The moment my fingers closed around the cardboard edge, the static began. This time it was louder, almost a screech, and it definitely came from the wall directly behind the canvas-covered object. I backed away slowly, my eyes locked on the spot. The vibration was intense. The single bare bulb flickered, throwing the shadows into a wild, dizzying dance. I had to know what was in that canvas. It was the only object in the entire attic that was carefully concealed, tied with thick nautical rope. Curiosity is a dangerous hook, and I was reeled in. I found a rusty pair of shears and a tool chest and cut the ropes. The canvas fell away with a dry whisper, revealing the object beneath. It was a machine. Not a modern computer, but a colossal, antique device made of brass, dark wood, and what looked like thick glass tubes. It was about the size of an old steamer trunk, heavy and squat. It had a single, massive antenna jutting from the top, reaching toward the peak of the attic roof. On its front was a panel of switches, dials, and a single, circular screen about the size of a dinner plate that was currently dark. It looked like something built by a mad scientist in the 1920s. The static peaked, vibrating so powerfully that dust rained down from the rafters. The machine was alive. I looked at the dials. One was labeled frequency, another gain, and a third was marked with a single, deeply etched word, Listen. The static faded again. Now there was a new sound, a low, rhythmic hum coming from the brassen casing. I realized the machine was the source of the noise. The static was merely its angry awakening. I reached out and touched the cold metal casing. There was a faint scent of ozone and something metallic, like blood or old pennies. I had to know what it was. I spent the next hour carefully pushing aside boxes and running an extension cord up from the second floor to the attic. The machine had a massive, old-fashioned plug. When I connected the power, nothing happened. The screen remained dark. The humming stopped. I checked the wiring. I checked the fuse box, but everything seemed fine. The machine just sat there, silent and inert. But it felt heavy with potential, like a landmine waiting for the right pressure. I left the attic that day, feeling unsettled, carrying a new secret that felt too strange to share. On the third Tuesday, I skipped my afternoon class and drove straight home. I didn't even stop for a snack. I went directly to the attic. I had researched old radio equipment and short-wave transmission devices, but nothing matched the unsettling design of the machine. The sheer weight of its mystery was crushing me. I noticed something instantly. One of the dials, the one marked frequency, had moved. I was certain I had left it on the lowest setting. Now it was turned up about a quarter of the way. I approached the machine slowly, my pulse thudding in my ears. The air around it felt noticeably colder than the rest of the attic. There was no static, no hum, just silence. I reached out and touched the switch labeled power. I flicked it up. Nothing. I checked the plug, still connected. I checked the dial, still moved to the 1/4 position. I was about to give up when I accidentally bumped the gain dial. It shifted a hair, and a green light flickered momentarily on the panel, then went dark. I moved the dial back and forth, slowly, carefully. The green light came on. Then the single, circular screen on the front of the machine flickered to life. It was not a traditional screen. It was like a miniature radar display, glowing with a sickly, faint green light. A single, thin green line rotated slowly around the center point. It looked like an obsolete piece of surveillance technology. I leaned closer, my breath clouding the glass cover. I started turning the frequency dial, barely moving it a millimeter at a time, watching the green line. As I moved the dial, the green light grew stronger, and the hum returned, but this time it was lower, deeper, vibrating in my teeth. Then I hit a frequency. The green line stopped. It didn't stutter, it didn't slow down, it just stopped moving, frozen at the 3 o'clock position. And the hum intensified, shifting into a steady, vibrating drone. My heart was beating so hard I thought it might punch through my chest. I looked closer at the screen. Where the line had stopped, a tiny, faint white dot appeared. It was moving, slowly. I turned the gain dial up a bit more. The dot sharpened. It was definitely moving, oscillating back and forth along the edge of the circular display. Then a voice. It was barely a whisper, a sound pulled from the deepest throat of a dying radio, submerged in a well of white noise. It was not a voice I recognized. It was low, raspy, and painfully slow, as if the speaker was struggling to force the sound through something dense and resistant. K-A-L. My name. I shot backward, stumbling over a coil of old extension cord, landing hard on my hip. I stared at the machine, the green light seeming to glare at me with malicious intelligence. It knew my name. How?
The machine was dormant, possibly for decades, wrapped in a forgotten corner of an attic nobody ever used. It had no connection to the outside world, no internet, no satellite link. It was a box of brass and tubes. The voice came again, slightly louder this time, more strained. Leb, help! I scrambled backward until my spine hit a stack of paint cans. I couldn't breathe. I was completely paralyzed by the certainty that this thing was not just receiving a signal, it was listening. It was talking to me. I wanted to run, but the fear had me shackled to the spot. I needed to turn it off.
I crawled back to the machine, my hand shaking so violently I could barely aim for the power switch. I slammed my hand down on it. The screen went black. The humming died. The attic was instantly engulfed in absolute, dense silence. I sat there for 10 minutes, gasping, waiting for a hidden sound, a shadow, anything. But there was nothing, just the dry air and the scent of ozone. I ran down the stairs and locked the attic door. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the white dot on the green screen, the location where the line had stopped. I knew with a horrifying, gut-twisting certainty that the machine wasn't just picking up some random ghost broadcast. It was tuned to a fixed location. And the dot was moving, slowly, getting closer. The next morning, I drove to the town hall and went to the city archives. I pretended I was doing a history project. I searched every record I could find about my house, 131 Hawthorne Street, built in 1935. I found old permits, blueprints, and census records. Then I found it, a document dated 1947. It was an application for a special electrical permit filed by the previous owner, a man named Dr. Silas Wayne. The application described installation of a unique high-frequency receiver and directional antenna for advanced meteorological study. A meteorological study? In an attic? The blueprints attached to the permit showed the exact location of the machine, and beneath it, a tiny, handwritten note in Dr. Wayne's shaky script. The listening post is aligned. Primary target frequency 45.9 megahertz. Target location, the East Field. I recognized the name of the field instantly. It was a vast, empty stretch of farmland about 4 miles east of my house. I looked at my watch. It was Monday. I had 1 day before Tuesday arrived again. I went home and forced myself to go back up to the attic. The machine was cold, silent, and dead. But the frequency dial was still set exactly where I had left it, 45.9. I spent an hour staring at the map of Havenwood. I drew a line 4 miles east from 131 Hawthorne Street. The line ended exactly in the middle of the East Field. I remembered the white dot. It was moving. It was closer. The horror wasn't just the voice. The horror was the realization that the machine wasn't built to listen to the sky. It was built to listen to something very specific, something terrestrial. And whatever it was broadcasting on a narrow, dedicated frequency, and it had been broadcasting there since 1947. I had to see the East Field. I drove out there at dusk. The field was flat, barren, and utterly silent. It was surrounded by a low, ancient barbed wire fence. I parked my car and hopped the fence, walking toward the center of the field, guided by the compass on my phone. When I reached the approximate center point, I stopped. Nothing. Just dry earth. I was about to leave when I noticed a small anomaly in the ground. A slight, perfectly circular depression, maybe 6 feet in diameter, hidden beneath the tall weeds. I knelt down and pulled away the weeds. The depression was lined with old pitted concrete, and in the center of the concrete there was a hole A hole about 3 inches wide, perfectly round, surrounded by cracked masonry. It wasn't a well. It was a ventilation shaft. I pressed my ear close to the concrete. Silence. I took a deep, shaky breath, and then I screamed down the hole, a loud, panicked, "Hello!" The silence of the field swallowed the sound instantly. I waited for a minute. Nothing. I drove home, arriving well after dark. I locked every door and every window. I couldn't shake the image of that hole. Why would someone build a ventilation shaft in the middle of a barren field leading to nowhere? Or rather, leading down? I tossed and turned all night, the image of the slowly moving white dot constantly in my mind. Tuesday arrived, cold and gray. The air felt charged with unspoken tension. I knew the machine would come on again. I knew the voice would call my name, and I knew the dot would be closer. I waited until 2 p.m., the exact time the machine had powered up the previous week. I climbed the attic stairs, my entire body heavy with dread. I paused at the top. The bare bulb was flickering, and the humming was back, low, resonant, vibrating the floor. It was already on. I rushed to the machine. The screen was glowing green. The dot was there, and it was no longer oscillating. It was still, dead center on the display plate. It was here. It had arrived at the target location. I leaned close to the machine, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I turned the gain dial up fully. The hum became a roar, filling the attic with a suffocating sound. The voice, stripped of almost all static, was clear now. It was a human voice. A man, low, ragged, terrified. "Caleb, don't touch the door! Don't open the door!" I spun around. There were no doors in the attic except the one leading to the stairs. Then I realized the only other object in the attic was the canvas-wrapped steamer trunk-shaped machine. It was built into the structure of the house. It wasn't just a radio. It was a barrier. The voice was screaming now, a desperate guttural sound that tore at the silence. "He hears you. He listened for 70 years. He's outside, Caleb. He's outside the canvas. Don't let him out. Don't let him out." I looked at the brass box. The front panel, which had looked solid, now looked like it was under immense pressure. The glass tubes were glowing fiercely, pulsing with the intensity of the sound. The machine was screaming because something was trying to get out of it. I stumbled back, my eyes fixed on the device. "He's been waiting for the new operator, Caleb. Wayne built this to seal him, to keep him listening to the emptiness of the east field. But you moved the dial, Caleb. You let him know he had an audience." A sudden violent bang echoed from inside the brass casing, so loud it felt like a gunshot. The green screen flashed violently white. The white dot at the center of the display elongated, becoming a jagged thin line that pulsed with pure electrical energy. "He's tired of the static. He's tired of the long dark. You gave him the frequency." Another bang, closer this time, and a hairline crack across the circular glass screen. I could smell burning metal. I backed up toward the stairs, clutching the shears I had used to cut the canvas. The machine was vibrating so hard it was shaking the entire attic floor. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and something rotten, something that smelled like old grave dirt. "He's been watching you for weeks, Caleb," the voice whispered, calm now, but utterly cold. The man was gone. This was a different voice, deeper, older. "He found your voice, Caleb. Now I can see your eyes." I didn't open my eyes. I didn't need to. I felt the awful, crushing weight of something falling over me, pinning me to the floor. The cold that hit me was not the winter cold, but the absolute, final cold of the grave. The last sound I heard, just before the black silence claimed me, was the deep, satisfied sigh of a thing that had finally finished listening to the void and was ready to begin speaking to the world. Thank you for listening to The Listener in the Static. If you made it this far, please like, subscribe, and share this story with a friend who always checks the closet before bed. And tell me in the comments, if you found a strange antique device in your home, would you turn it on?